Shalom and good day all. This is Tehillim29 back again, but this time for another anime movie review. And I must admit, I have finally found the time to watch this movie, and this is incredible. I never thought I would enjoy it as much as I could, or as much as I did. So I hope you enjoy this review as much as I do. And it's nice that it is to have some time to see this movie here in Australia. And I must admit, My Hero Academia World's Mission or World Heroes Mission um, definitely had a lot of good stuff to it. Yeah, it did miss some small elements, but did those small elements ruin the story? I don't think so. Um, so as you can see here, on the screen, I've got a picture of the poster that was shown in relation to the movie that was released. And what I've sort of titled this is the Big Three Plus Ultra. And this is how it sort of felt in relation to it. So I'm going to start to move into the area of the first act, to which I've broken down into about three parts, and I'm going to get to talking about what happened in the first act, and then I'm going to move into the second act, and then finally finish off with the third act, and then jump into my afterthoughts and leave off with the ratings. So, jumping into the first act. The first part of the first act takes us into the headquarters of a doomsday cult called Humorize, to where it is their agenda to rid the people, or to rid the world of people with quirks. And we get to see what deadly substance that they have at their hands, then use it on a city to try to find people who are without quirks. Now, that at the beginning I found was very interesting because with the ones at the beginning, or when they were looking for people without quirks, in the city, they used it also as a method to bring people into the cult of Humorize. And that was very interesting. And it really stood out at the beginning. As things progress in this part, we start to see an entry of all the heroes connected to UA helping in the world mission to find the main headquarters of Humorize. And with the deadly substance at hand to save the lives of civilians over the world. They travel to locations. Well, they travel to the locations of Ophion, to which Ophion is the place to which we have Bakugo, Shoto, and Deku end up going to. So that's the main place that they're actually sent to in this world. Whilst the other members of UA are sent to the USA, France, Japan, well, of course, Japan being the main area where My Hero Academia takes place, but there are heroes set in there. We also have Singapore as well as Egypt to try to stop the members of this doomsday cult. And when that was executed, I enjoyed the execution because it showed the severity of how deadly this supposed gas is, and what this gas can do. And you can actually get to see what happens in it in the movie, because once the gas is released, to people who might not have had their quirks manifest, and this even includes people who haven't manifested their quirk before, it almost felt like a bit of a scene in relation to the first X-Men movie. Just giving that hint that it felt like it grasped from that. But there are also other things that I felt it grasped from as well, which I really enjoyed. So the second part of the first arc, we learn, or in this first part of the act, we also learn that the head of Humorize is someone by the name of Fleckturn, and has learned of the disappearance of important documents and has sent an assassin to take out the hero who stole them, or to take out the person who stole them. And we later learn that the character's name is called Alan Kay, but he also has a connection to a character that we'll be meeting in the second act. So, as things progressed, the people, or the heroes Shoto, Deku, and Bakugo ends up getting a case of stolen jewelry dropped. Now, this links to the unknown person that they are following at the time. And we do learn their name once it moves into the second act. And this is really good. And this person that they're following um, was actually helping or doing some dirty work just to try to earn a means of a living due to the situation that happened to him and his family. And we do get to see a little bit more about that later on. And takes the case with the vital info. Um, the further it progresses in this part, we learn that Deku has now been framed for murder by a corrupt officer in Ophion. And is also a member of Humorize. Deku, along with his new acquaintance, finally get caught in the middle of a crossfire between both the police and the villain that are following after them. Both for the case until they both run and escape the area. Deku finds a way to inform Endeavor, Bakugo, Shoto of his safety. So during that time, we get a bit of a situation to which, okay, Deku has literally been framed for the murders of millions, to which we, the audience, know he's not responsible for. And we don't know where this claim has come from. When the trailer for this originally came out, there was suspicion that it was someone sort of like who was able to clone Deku and sort of like set him up for murder. That doesn't happen, and I'm really glad that doesn't happen in this story, because it really does, in a way, set things up to show, yes, there are actually problems in this area of Ophion. Now it's time to move into the second act. As the first part of the second act begins, we start to learn of the acquaintance of whom Deku is with, and their past and how Humorize plays a part in the destruction of his home life. Learning his name is Rhodey, Deku, after another confrontation with the villains, end up going into hiding, or to a hiding spot to where they can't find him, to where Rhodey finally opens up to Deku about his past to present situation, eventually finding some transport to use to vacate the area. Moving into the second part of the second act, Deku and Rhodey try to travel as far as possible so the villains don't find them, but due to unforeseen circumstances, once again, they are found again, but with Shoto, who got Deku's message, manages to turn up to help save the day for both Deku and Rhodey. As they are being chased, Baku has finally made his appearance to help Deku out. As things progress, Fleckturn has announced to the world that he is going to release the Trigger Bomb. And this Trigger Bomb is sort of like connected to a drug that's also in the world. And it's this particular bomb that actually also set in the beginning the people who hadn't shown their quirks before. Once this was released in the area, I think it was in Ophion or where it was originally dispersed. We never really get well, we somewhat get an idea where it's being done, and the way this gas is released, yeah, it does a lot of damage. So not only can it have people's quirks be released, but it can go as far as actually killing them. And that shows how deadly that this trigger bomb is. In a period of 2 hours, as the heroes around the world now must try to keep their nations calm and not panic during this announcement, as the heroes do their best to find the location of the trigger bombs. And the way that this was executed, I really enjoyed because it showed the seriousness of what the heroes would do to save the lives of everyone of every city that they were sent to, whether it's Singapore, Egypt, and even though we didn't get to meet like all the heroes of all the locations, it was still very fun to see. So, jumping into the third act, moving into the first part of the third act, Deku, Rody, Bakugo, and Shoto, all working together, have found out the location of the main headquarters of Humorize so that they can disarm the bombs. In other words, they managed to obtain a bomb disarm key, to which was in the briefcase, and this is where we learn of the person known as Alan Kay, who has a connection to Rody Soul's old man, and that was amazing. I really liked how they tied that up, and it was well executed. And with the as Deku has separated, as things sort of like continue on, they start to head towards the headquarters. Things get hectic as they draw closer and closer to disarming the trigger bombs set around the world. As Deku has separated from Rody, who has now encountered cult members of Humorize, Shoto and Bakugo are going up against some villains that even challenge the way they use their quirks to win a fight. Deku finally meets up with Fleckturn as he also seeks to disarm the trigger bombs. And I must admit, this area to which we got to see Shoto and Bakugo up against their particular enemy, I'll be able to expand a little bit more when I move into the afterthoughts. The way these characters were set up for like their rivals, even though you never learnt their name, boy, did they execute a well developed fight. And this is a big improvement from um, not just the first movie, but also the second movie. But I'll be able to cover a little bit more when I move into the afterthoughts. Moving into the second part of the third act, Rhodey ends up making a reappearance with the disarming key for the trigger bombs and is about to hand it over to Fleckturn. As Deku lays injured trying to make his way to save the world, and his friends, Rhodey seeks to save his siblings as things progress further, so both Bakugo and Shoto begin to defeat their unknown villains, who were fair rivals to them. And that is the truth. They were well thought of, well executed, but even in their defeat, you did get to see some new moves connected to both Shoto and Bakugo, and that was really good. Deku starts to give his all against Fleckturn, and finally to reach towards the end of the story, as things also change for Rhodey. Now, I'm not going to give away the complete end. I advise you go check out this movie for yourself because this was fantastic. Now, time to move into the afterthoughts. As I reflect back to look onto the first act of this movie, with the introduction of the villain Fleckturn and how Humor Eyes exists in this universe, we get this character's motivation as to wanting to see the end of all quirks and for the quirkless to only exist. Whilst the events of this event is happening, we learn that one of his followers has escaped with vital information. After the first test of the trigger bomb, which is used in the vicinity he is at for the headquarters, causing some crazy things to happen. And the way they're dressed in their garb and stuff, it's just, oh my goodness. Um, when the heroes started coming onto the scene, you certainly felt that things were getting serious and how drastic the situation occurred. And without warning, even as the UA members were sent around the world to help, which I really enjoyed some of the further world building in this movie in relation to the My Hero Academia universe. With Fleckturn finding out the documents were gone, we saw how quickly he moved into action to obtain them, even using members of his cult that work within the police force to capture Deku on false charges. And this is where we do learn in the movie that yes, um, Deku was framed by the corrupt police, and you actually get to see one of the officers who do actually have like the Doomsday Cult's book of Humor Eyes. Moving into the second act, it started us down the journey and background of a new character called Rhodey, plus the things we learned about his past to even his family to basically how he became a bit of an outcast because of his own dad's decisions, with no hero to help him doing whatever job he can, including dirty jobs, trying to earn a living. But we also see how Deku has entered his path and starts to play a role of moving him to the straight path as they escape from some feisty villains. And yeah, they are pretty feisty villains. As to how desperate they are for the briefcase that Ruby has gotten in a mix up of things connected to the first act. One of the best things about this second act is when Deku was reunited with Shoto and Bakugo, and they came to help him. Plus Rhodey, until eventually that Fleckton announced to the world that the trigger bonds he has around the world would be set off within 2 hours, placing a demand on what he lost, with no real promises of keeping the promise to disarm them. And that is the truth. In other words, he had no plan of disarming the bombs. He wanted them to go off, boom, around the world without any second hesitation. And it really goes to show you of how they set things up. So jumping into the third act, as things got serious for all the heroes around the world in My Hero Academia, as Bakugo, Shoto, Rhodey, Deku flew towards the Humorize main base of location, to which they also learn in relation to um, some information sticks or USB sticks or flash drives. And that was really good too. Both Shoto and Bakugo fought two interesting villains that definitely made it hard for them to fend off. Bakugo's villain, which could split himself into two people, but with some crazy bladed spikes, which almost reminded me of the Teenage Mutant Ninja character of Shredder, but with more additional powers to be a threat to his opponent. With Shoto's villain, their powers were similar to Shoto's, but with a slight difference being that they were able to withstand heat from his flames, but was able to use water as a weapon. What was an incredible fight, and what an incredible fight they both went up against in relation to their villains. And the way the fight scene was, oh my goodness, these characters, yeah, they might have gotten an ass whooping, um, especially Shoto and Bakugo. They did get a bit of an ass kicking um, in this particular movie, but after their ass kicking, they learned from their mistakes, and you could definitely see that in the movie and in the fight, that they learned from their mistakes and began to adapt and change the situation around. And that was fantastic. Now, jumping to into the main villain fight with Deku against Flexion, we soon get to see his backstory as to what led him to creating the cult of Humor Eyes. And in the process, that learning his quirk is reflect. And this character felt like the Nomu that All Might fought in season one. In other words, the way that they executed um, Fleckturn, this was Deku's version of the Nomu fight seen in season one of My Hero Academia. This just nailed it. And yeah, was this something that really sort of like put Deku not only into getting his butt kicked, but he also had to really put everything that he had learned, not only in the present situation, but also things past. And we get a bit of a link to that as well in the movie. And as Deku went up against him, this fight was in no way easy for Deku until Rhodey turned up on the scene, also learning what his quirk was, which was pretty cool. With Rhodey's quirk, it connects to something that he has with him. And you learn that Rhodey has trouble sort of like showing his emotions. But this is where, when things are connected to his quirk, or you see the thing that's connected to his quirk, and that is the character of Pino. Without Pino, which is his quirk, um, Pino is the one that shows his emotions and sort of like shows and play also plays a bit of a part in what happens in the end of the story. And I'm gonna leave it there for the moment. Um, this story was incredible through and through. I think it is probably one of my um, out of all the three movies. My favorite My Hero Academia movie out of all the three movies, as this just made some leaps and bounds in this universe. I stick to the ratings to which I give to the main characters supporting anime and story, as this is a huge improvement from the previous Hero Academia films, and the voice acting was incredible too. Wow, this this was just amazing. So for the main character ratings, I gave an 8.5 out of 10. And I really enjoyed what they did here with the big three, and how the big three even worked with or in other words, how the big three also worked with Rhodey, but also how they worked together in this situation. I give a 8 out of 10 for the supporting characters, even though we didn't get the know the name of all the supporting characters, but we knew like some of the main supporting characters, such as Endeavor, the members of UAIDed around the world. Fantastic job. The animation has made a very big improvement in this, to which I give it an 8.5 out of 10. And for the overall story rating, this gets a 9 out of 10 from me. Well, I'm going to finish off with a big thanks to the creator of My Hero Academia, which is Kohei Horikoshi. And until then, let's keep it let's keep it colorful, plus ultra. And I must admit, this was fantastic. I advise you go see this movie too. Until then, have yourself an awesome day and let's keep it colorful.